In these bomber-laden ships, eastward bound from Canada and the USA, lies a threat not only to Hitler's campaign against the British Isles, but to his grip on Europe itself. Today, the leaders of Germany well know that unless that sea supply line can be swiftly cut, all the triumphs of their armies will have been in vain. The U-boats lie in waiting, 4, 5, and 6 of them together, working in flotillas. Like wolves, they will stalk a convoy for days at a stretch, biding their time until the chance of wind and weather offers the fattest prize to their torpedoes.
We're in the wheelhouse of HMCS Sackville, the last of 269 corvettes that were operated by Canada and the Allies during World War II.
And along Canada's coasts and rivers, the corvettes take the water to help Britain's hard-pressed destroyers keep that vital supply line open. Already the tide of battle may be turning. Already the wide Atlantic is becoming a graveyard for the raiders themselves.
Say an action occurs at if you're on watch, you run from the Orlikins, you'd run down to the depth charge throwers, and the light would flash, and you would pull a fork. You'd pull this fork, and away went the depth charge.
Yet the final answer lies not alone in ships. Hitler himself has said, it is not arms that decide, but the men behind them.
I was a gutsy kid, there's never mind the bravery or hero stuff, and determined. And I felt I did my little part anyway, of a pretty big scheme. No, but I'm pleased to have been there.
This space is more or less as it would have looked like in 1944 or 45, and it's the forward seaman's mess, and you'd have a number of junior sailors who would live in this space, perhaps as many as 20. This is where they lived, and it would be a very wet area in the ship. They bounced around a lot at sea.
The ship would be dipping and lifting and rolling at the same time, all at the same time.
At best, life aboard ship was uncomfortable and monotonous, and in winter the story was often one of incredible hardship.
This space would have been the officers' mess. Now it is the trustees' mess for everybody of all walks of life and all ranks. And the people you see assembled around, many of them are retired Navy. Some of them are come from other walks of life. There were some very key things that were part of Canada's war effort, and escorting those convoys and getting the materiel, the fuel, the ammunition, the bombers, the fighters, the tanks, and the men over to the UK and to Europe generally was the sort of thing that won the war for the Allies.
If the country owed a debt to the men and ships of the Navy, it owed an equal debt to those who manned the great merchant fleets. Men of every nationality, they went quietly about their jobs, facing daily the prospect of ordeal by fire or water.
Crow's Nest Officers Club started in January 1942. It was a dark time in World War II. The war was not going well. Captain Rollo Mingy, who was a senior naval officer here in the wartime port, realized for the convoy system to work, the naval officers and the merchant officers had to have trust and confidence in each other, and they needed a venue to develop, to foster that relationship, to build that trust and confidence. Captain Mingy started the club with that in mind. Also, before post-traumatic stress syndrome was recognized as a legitimate condition the way it is today, he realized the importance of having a safe and secure environment where people who've had a shared difficult experience can talk it out. So this was a really special place in the war years for that purpose as well. Originally this was the loft of a warehouse. It was quickly converted into the Seagoing Officers Club. Not the Naval Officers Club, not the Merchant Officers Club, but the Seagoing Officers Club. So you could be a naval officer in St. John's, but if you were the legal officer up on the base, this wasn't your club, unless you had a berth in a seagoing Allied ship or a merchant ship in the Battle of the Atlantic. When Captain Mingy opened this club and allowed ships to present something to represent the ship in the club here, each ship would be given 2 foot by 2 foot of wall space to leave their mark. So that's where all this gun shield graffiti started. And most of it is a play on the name of the captain or the name of the ship, the role the ship had during the war, some incident from its wartime activity. You'll see several of the ships rammed German U-boats, and there's HMCS Moose Jaw has a U-boat up in the Antlers, and it representing the story of how they rammed a U-boat. Most of this art was painted, in fact all of it was painted by the crews of the ships. Some of it though is clearly a step above amateur art. HMCS Saint Laurent is a very busy one, and I think that was probably a professional artist in the crew who did that one. This is the periscope from the German U-boat U-190 that surrendered down the coast here at Bay Bulls at the end of the war. The U-190 was responsible for the sinking of HMCS Esquimalt, the last Canadian naval unit, lost in World War II. And it was torpedoed in the approaches to Halifax Harbour in late April 1945. At the end of the war, the club closed briefly, but then it reopened as an all-services officers club. But we try to maintain the wartime atmosphere, keep it a time capsule of the Battle of the Atlantic years.